friends, we're back. Your favorite podcast show of the week. It is Location Weekly. It's episode number 575. We are recording on June the 28th. And Aubriana, how are you?
I am good. Same as always. I'm here. How are you?
Not too bad. Yeah, not too bad. It's been a nice little run here in Toronto, and the weather quite hot and humid already, and we're not even in July, but that's okay. You know, my baseball teams kind of struggled the last week, but they won last night, so that's good. And other than that, life is just marches on.
Right. Yeah, just trying to navigate the new summer schedule here and get into a rhythm and routine. So that's been a little fun. But yeah, same thing every day, just trying to figure it out as we go along.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Cool. Well, we have an interesting show for you this week. Three stories this week because we do have a special guest, which I'll talk about a little bit later on our show. But nice to have guests coming back again. But in the meantime, I'll let Aubriana kick us off with our first story.
All right. So let's go over to a London-based company, Waymap, and they have a goal of helping the visually impaired navigate their surroundings. They're starting right now with public transit. And what's really interesting about this to me is that the founder and CEO, his name is Tom Pei, he obviously knows a thing or two about this as he lost his sight at 39 years old, which is, I can't even imagine having to transition into that, at that age and having to run a company. It's one amazing success story, I think, from his side, but also just the insight that he has into this has to be very concrete, right? So he just concluded a recent pilot with Waymap in Washington, D.C. For their metro. And really their goal is to map all the metro routes first. And then to expand it to other places like hotels and hospitals and museums, other public places like that. What's interesting is that some of the fine print in this article was talking about how the average blind person uses 2.5 routes. And you have to think about this. It's so much for them to remember that step by step and turn by turn while still maintaining their safety. Think about crossing streets and all of those things, right? So I think that what's really cool here is this is potentially opening up a whole new world for those that are visually impaired to step outside and go other places besides, maybe the grocery store or, I don't know, the post office or wherever those 2.5, 3 places, are that they frequent, right? So what I also wanted to highlight here is that this isn't just a feel-good story, although I really like that about this, but it's actually some really impressive technology behind the scenes that's happening. So they don't use GPS to track users. They actually are tapping into the smartphone's inertial measurement unit sensors. So you think of the accelerometers and the barometers and all of those things to get data about how fast does somebody walk? What is their gait like? Are they going up or down the stairs? What direction are they facing? All of those things. And then Waymap has developed its own algorithm and, it basically can identify what are 5,000 possible exact locations and, I would say positionally, directionally facing where a user might be based on their next steps so that they can provide exact instructions to users. And what they were saying is this is not just okay, turn right in 100 feet. No, this is step by step what they're going to do, saying, hey, you need to turn to 10 o'clock and take 4 steps. So really they're getting very, very granular and really helping anybody navigate this. So they're going to take, right now for this trial, they took the maps from local transit authorities and OpenStreetMaps. That's kind of their goal. But for this one, they actually use LiDAR scans to map the DC stations and also 360-degree video. So they can also identify obstacles. Think of trash cans and benches or pillars, seating areas, all of those things. And then one of the other goals they have is when they get to critical mass adoption from the app usage, they really want to be able to have a a data startup, right? So that you could donate data of wayfinding so that you can help others who are kind of navigating as well. So I think that's a really cool application of ways to share your location data and how to use it for a good cause. They recently closed out a 4.9 million pre-Series A, and then they are looking to raise Series A next year, and expecting to be profitable shortly after. So I think this is a really great story. I love the technology behind it. I love that this is tied to a personal experience. I mean, I think that everything about this is just phenomenal. So
Completely agree with everything you've just said. I think it's an amazing story, and I think the best startups are the ones that come from personal experience and where you can build on the use cases that you're familiar with. So I love that aspect of this, and how Waymap came to be. A couple of comments on the things you said. Like, so first of all, the whole idea of not using GPS data here, but relying on the sensors in the smartphone itself, be it the barometric sensors, accelerometers, gyroscopes, etc. I think that's super interesting to me, because I think that for the most part we're still so early days in brands and technology companies and advertising, actually leveraging some of that data to create great experiences. And I think for me, that's what this is here. It's about creating a much more holistic, better experience for the visually impaired person. As I was hearing you talk about that part of it, my mind went to our old buddy Ellie Portnoy, and his company Sense 360. Where looking at some of those things around using the sensor data within the devices to sort of power in their case ad experiences. But I think it's just an underutilized thing in the mobile phones these days, and we're not doing enough with it yet. So I'm excited by that. I think the space that they're in around addressing issues around visual impairment, I think there's still a lot of room. You might remember on this show, wow, probably 3 years ago, maybe more. No, it's probably more than that now. We covered a company called Lachal, and they are a footwear manufacturing company, and they had created some shoes for visually impaired people with an app, in their case using GPS technology, but the shoes themselves had haptic sensors built into them that would basically pulse on the left side or the right side, indicating to that person they should turn right or left or move forward or stop, or whatever the case might be. So I think there's a lot of opportunities here. I like that even though this is a UK London-based company, this test is happening in Washington D.C. that they're running this with the public transit system there, 25 metro stations, 1,000 bus stops. So I think there's a lot of positives here, and I'm always excited by these kinds of stories, and when people are using our location data and tech to create great immersive experiences that are incredibly helpful. So love it. All right, on to our second story now. So we're going to jump all the way over to South America, and specifically Peru, where there's a company out there called Kiwibot, and they're based in Colombia. They're a robot delivery startup, and what's a little bit unique about them is they're using their robots to disrupt the out-of-home industry. So they have a fleet of 1,200 robots, and they've been reaching 200,000 food deliveries in cities with these robots. And now in Peru, what they're going to do is use these robots for advertising. So they're not delivering anything. They have screens on them, and they're basically trying to disrupt the out-of-home advertising space. And so picture a fleet of robots rolling around your local shopping mall or outdoor marketplace area. The ads go on autonomously. They find and intersect with people along their path, and then they're basically creating impressions for whatever the ad is that's running on the robots. And they're running a pilot of this at a place called Jockey Plaza, which is a shopping mall in Lima, Peru. And They do plan on taking this to other cities and airports and trade shows and festivals and things like that. Anywhere where there's sort of high traffic of pedestrian traffic, and robots can come alongside and create some sort of engagement with that audience. They're also developing technology to aid with the measurement of the campaigns themselves. So this includes how many people have interacted with the ad, impressions achieved, conversions, sales generated, and things like that. So I think it's an interesting approach. I don't think from a technology point of view it's so disruptive, but I like the idea of using a fleet of robots, as an out of home, placement alternative. To me, that makes some interesting sense. There was some mention in the article that I was reading about. There's a company called Cheetah Mobile in China, which is doing something very similar with a fleet of 7,000 robots in 1,000 shopping malls in China. And so it's not, sort of a whole new model, but I think it could be one that could create a lot of new eyeballs and new impressions. Just approaching it in a different way. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is approaching digital out of home in a unique and different way. We've seen some of the robots in like giant Eagle stores that were kind of helping facilitate more like wayfinding or product finding. So this is a new play. What I like about this is like the ability to bring in all of that data and analytics and not necessarily rely on, let's say, an Uber driver who's like being routed and where they're going to be. It's a little bit more planned, probably a little bit more static in the aspect of like knowing who's in specific locations at specific times in terms of an audience. So I think this is very interesting. And I'm also intrigued that they're rolling this out in Peru of all places. So yeah, I think this is a trend to keep an eye out to see if it kind of expands and starts to take shape in other areas, but we shall see, right?
We shall see. Indeed.
Um,
All right. Now, before we go on to our final story, I did mention at the top of the show we do have a special guest this week. So I had the opportunity a few days ago to sit down with Nick Patrick. Nick is the co-founder and CEO of Radar, which is a member of the LBMA, and doing some interesting things in the world of SDKs, gathering location data embedded in apps. Have a wide array of retail clients, but I'll kind of shut up about it and let you hear directly from Nick Patrick, co-founder and CEO of Radar. Here he is.
So my name is Nick Patrick. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Radar. Radar is the leading geofencing platform, and we power use cases like curbside pickup, store locators, location-based messaging for brands like Panera, T-Mobile, American Eagle Outfitters. We primarily focus on APIs and SDKs for mobile apps. So that's functionality for geofencing and geocoding, place visit detection, things like that. And we're based in New York City.
Amazing. So you mentioned that you focus mostly on SDKs embedded in apps and things like that, and obviously on the geofencing side of the equation in our community. But to me, that seems to be something that's evolving rapidly in our space, right? Obviously, location data and privacy rules and things like that are a constant battle that our whole industry is dealing with. Apple's making lots of changes, Google's making lots of changes. The government, in the U.S. in particular, is there's a draft bill now for the U.S. version of GDPR. Where you guys sit on kind of some of those things?
Yeah. Well, I think there are two trends we can talk about. One is privacy and the shift towards first-party data. So Radar doesn't do anything with third-party data. We help apps and brands that use the platform collect first-party data in a privacy-conscious way and power app experiences or contextual messaging based off of that. So we can talk a little bit more about that. I think the second thing that we see is what we sort of talk about is the Amazon effect or the Uber effect. I think we as consumers are used to, hailing an Uber, dropping a pin on the map. You can see the car coming to you, see the ETA. We order a package on Amazon, we can type in our address, package shows up at our doorstep the next day. So these really frictionless, seamless experiences, oftentimes mediated by mobile apps. That's where we see a lot of the most innovative brands and companies investing, whether that's, brick and mortar brands that we work with like Panera or American Eagle Outfitters, or more digital first brands that we work with like Ibotta or T-Mobile.
Yeah, and so like speaking of some of those brands, like is there kind of one particular example of a client of yours that you've worked with where you've seen really great engagement or a unique application of your technology that you want to share?
Yeah, I can give you a couple examples. So we power a wide variety of use cases on the brick and mortar side. We've been powering a lot of use cases around curbside pickup arrival detection. So Panera Bread, for example, uses the Radar SDK in their app. When somebody places an order for curbside pickup, we can help Panera understand when they're on their way, when they're 5 minutes away, when they've arrived, and improve operational efficiency and decrease wait times for curbside pickup. We're also seeing a lot of retailers invest in location-aware app experiences. So we power an in-store experience for American Eagle Outfitters. You download the American Eagle app and you go to one of their stores. Radar geofencing will say, hey, this device is in the store, unlock this self-checkout feature. We also support Joann, which is a arts and crafts retailer with in-store only coupons that are unlocked with geofencing. And then on the digital first side, we work with Ibotta. They're a rewards and payments app, and we help them understand when somebody visits a Starbucks, visits a Walmart, with our place detection capabilities. And they've seen really dramatic increases in push notification open rates with these location triggered and location targeted notifications. So kind of a wide range of applications, both brick and mortar and digital first. And again, it kind of all comes back to first party data, mobile SDKs, really getting clear opt-in and consent from end users and doing this in kind of a privacy conscious, future-proof way.
Yeah, and it's super important, right? And I think that you mentioned the example about Uber and how how that works in terms of knowing where that driver is and so on. And I think at the end of the day, when you're taking these types of applications and you're getting that kind of consent, you have to be really good about articulating your value proposition, right? What is that exchange in terms of I need
Absolutely.
data from you as a consumer, but I'm giving you this utility that is beneficial, right? And I think if you can do that really well, then people tend to opt in. People tend to sort of participate. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, when we started the company back in 2016, things were a lot different, right? It was much easier to request location permissions, both on iOS and Android. There actually wasn't even a separate background permission on Android. And it was kind of the Wild West. I mean, there were a lot of apps collecting location data, selling it to, data brokers and whatnot. Those days are over. Apple and Google have really raised the bar for requesting location permissions. You got to make it very clear to end users what they're opting into, what value they're getting out of it. As it should be, right? And so, at Radar, we see that as the future. We think those trends are only going to continue, and we focus on helping brands basically, request permissions and get opt-in in a super privacy-conscious way. Be really thoughtful about the data they're collecting, how long they're persisting it, where it's being sent, so on and so forth. So I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, quick kind of follow up on that though. Like when you look at sort of the post-COVID world like that we're in now, and brands, bricks and mortar retailers in particular, trying to recover and get traffic back to store. Are you seeing a lift now, like in terms of from a data perspective and engagement point of view? Are you starting to see that with the brands that you're working with?
Yeah, for sure. I think we saw a lot of new habits really take hold during COVID, things like curbside pickup, drive-through as a channel, delivery. And we're only seeing that continue. So I think consumers are really used to these frictionless mobile order ahead experiences. You're seeing a lot of leading QSRs and retailers kind of encode this stuff in their physical store footprints, launching things like drive-through only restaurants or mobile pickup only windows to pick up orders, or reserving parts of the store footprint for, order ahead fulfillment, things like that. So definitely seeing it continue. And I think we're helping, QSRs and retailers think through how an app can be sort of a digital companion to those physical experiences. And we think about our mission at Radar as connecting the digital and physical worlds. So sort of being this mediating layer between the two. And, a lot of these brands are encouraging folks to come out to their physical stores again. People are moving around the world again. And the app should be aware of whether you're, at home, off premise, on premise, and show you content and features accordingly. So Radar powers all sorts of different use cases related to that.
Awesome. That's great. And I like how you describe that, of connecting, both the physical and digital worlds, and the app sort of being aware of, where you are and what the context might be.
Yeah. And
that's really so.
Yeah, I'll say too, like, I think we've historically been pretty focused on mobile, but we see this trend, outside of brick and mortar. We see travel companies starting to invest again. We see things like augmented reality and self-driving cars and drones is all being about location context. And, so our long-term vision is to be a location layer for all those use cases and all those platforms. So we think about our long-term vision as location infrastructure for every product and service.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. For our listeners and viewers out there, we've been chatting with Nick Patrick. He's co-founder and CEO of Radar. We really appreciate you taking time to come and join us on Location Weekly. And we'll hopefully see you soon at one of our conferences or somewhere else in person where you can hang out with Nick and some of the Radar people. That'd be great.
Yeah, thanks so much, Asif.
Thanks, Nick. We really appreciate you coming on the show, and hopefully see you and some of your colleagues at Retail Loco and other things that we're doing later in the year. So thanks for doing that.
Good stuff. Let's head over to our final story and talk a little bit about Walmart, who is now partnering with Roku. So they are creating these new experiential and shoppable TV streaming, kind of like e-commerce commercials, right? So what's going to happen here is that Roku streamers will be able to purchase a specific featured product or products that would be fulfilled on via Walmart directly on Roku. So obviously Roku has a massive scale in terms of streaming platforms. And this is really going beyond what we've seen, I think, traditionally in either connected devices or OTT or CTV, which has been, QR codes on screens, the ability to scan something and then purchase from there. But what's interesting is that, Roku has the setup that your purchase information and your purchase data is already kind of captured there. So everything that happens in terms of you making a purchase to the system is already saved. You don't need to re-enter your credit card number. Everything is already there when you set up that system. So what's really cool is that Walmart and potentially other retailers in the future would have the ability to evaluate shopper behaviors, scale commerce offerings. They can also look at like how they want to, how do consumers want to shop? Do they want to do this during moments of entertainment? Or, is there something perhaps within the content at some point that they can loop in, right? They're watching content, something happens in a storyline, and now they can kind of tie that back to specific products, who knows? But really how it works is that the viewers would be served with a shoppable ad, and the remote, you can just kind of press OK. The payment details are pre-populated, as I mentioned, and then from there, Walmart checkout page would just place the order, send an email confirmation, with all of those details like shipping, everything else. I like that Roku is thinking about this holistically, and that they're thinking about like targeting, optimization, and measurement. So really like a full funnel and end-to-end play here. Also noted was that how they had previously partnered with Kroger to enable them to run some of their own like grocery data. We know Kroger is like, they've got their precision insights. They've got a whole separate team that is really tied to data. So being able to pull that in for closed loop attribution and for a measurement campaign is really interesting. So I think they're thinking about this really from like top to bottom, which is really cool. And I really believe this is the way of the future, right? It's like creating more of that impulse buy opportunities throughout all digital media, and not necessarily like just upper funnel or just like in the future, but really being able to drive like the here and now through television, mobile, whatever the digital interaction is, eventually maybe digital out of home, right? So I think that this is the way that we're going to see a lot of the connected television, smart TV, that inventory and that media, experiences open up to be able to do this. So, Roku's kind of the first leading the way here. But, I'm sure there will be others following very shortly.
Yeah, I think this is brilliant. I think it's a great move by Roku, and of course of great benefit to Walmart in terms of driving product sales. As I was listening to you, what was coming into my head was really thinking about growing up watching television sitcoms, and in those days there was a lot of focus on product placement, right? You would have like brands sponsoring shows, and making sure Coke was, seen sitting on the table, or, whatever furniture that, they were sitting on, or, whatever the case might be. A lot of that, shows like Friends and things like that. You saw a lot of that in those days. And, I think it's interesting to think about now with, streaming services, like Roku and Amazon, TV and Netflix and others, about the opportunities for brands to, to get engaged. In this way, and to have things be shoppable, where hey, I really like that that blouse that so and so is wearing on that show, or why can't I just buy it right then and there, or whatever the case might be. Even something as crazy as like a car, because we know like there are people who are buying cars online, without sight unseen. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for these types of services. And I think from a data perspective, it's rich, right? Because you have, the connectedness, you have the profiles, you have the credit card data, you have a lot of things here that, make this, way more insightful and valuable to a brand and to a retailer than historically we would have had in traditional television media or other things. So I like it, and I think from a retailer point of view, to comment on the Walmart or the Kroger piece of this, I think at the end of the day, yes, you're filling the basket, and you're driving online sales and shipping products out. I think it'd be interesting to even go one step further here and see if there's some way to drive incentive for store visit, to come pick up your your product that you just ordered, and maybe then incrementally spend more while you're there. That could be interesting here, right? And so I think there's a lot of opportunities. It's kind of, in some ways, it's a little bit like a different spin on, if you remember the dash buttons that Amazon had played with a long time ago, right? Where you have the little button beside your washing machine, and when you run out of, Tide, you hit the button and it places an order, through your Amazon account. In some ways, it's kind of like that, except now it's based on data and what the content is, and what you're watching, and then we drive, sort of some experience there or opportunity for you to purchase. So I like it. I think it's cool. It's a good start.
Yeah, for sure. And just to like two quick things that you brought up. One was, recently I was watching a show with my kids, and there was like this cute jacket, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's something I could find. And the only way to be able to do that really at this point is I'm like, okay, pause the TV, take a picture, see if I can find it on Pinterest through their image search, not coming up with anything. But imagine if I could have just like clicked and purchased for my child, or, like, oh, that's really cute. I think that opens up a whole plethora of opportunities for the industry. So you think about how there's like new revenue opportunities. It used to be, okay, we're going to sell that placement to Coke. They're going to be drinking a Coke or a Pepsi. You guys choose, and there's that placement. But now it's like everything is shoppable, that would be amazing. And the other, talking to a friend in the industry recently who is very much like at the forefront of what's happening in connected television and media. in general, he was saying that there's something called Spirit TV where they're showing like how to make cocktails, and he can actually click and have something from his television, and it's delivered in like an hour to his house. So like this is not a new concept, like this is happening. But imagine being able to do this at scale across multiple products. Like that is where we're talking about going. So this is just scratching the surface.
There you go. So lots going on, lots of interesting, technology applications and opportunities for brands to get engaged with consumers and leveraging location data. So that's our show for this week. Thank you for listening and watching. It's been episode number 575 of Location Weekly. Thanks again to our guest, Nick Patrick from Radar. And we'll be back next week with yet another show. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.
Bye.